House parties? Proof that humans can turn snacks and Spotify into a full-scale disaster. 1. The Great Flaming Pool Incident. It started as a summer pool party in Arizona and ended as a reenactment of Dante's Inferno. Someone thought it'd be a cool vibe to pour a little gasoline on the surface of the water and light it, just for that Instagram glow. Turns out, pools aren't designed for pyrotechnics. The fire jumped to nearby floaties, then to a plastic flamingo, then to the deck. Half the guests dove into the flaming pool, the other half ran screaming for the hose. One guy tried to film the chaos yelling, "This is lit," which technically it was. The fire department arrived to find a melted barbecue, 3 singed eyebrows, and 1 inflatable unicorn charred beyond recognition. The homeowners called it the hottest party of the summer. Their insurance company called it arson adjacent. 2. The bounce house takeoff. In Kansas, a family thought renting a giant bounce house for their kid's birthday would be the safest way to contain chaos. It was, until the wind decided to RSVP. A strong gust lifted the entire bounce castle off the ground with 6 kids still inside. Witnesses described it as Wizard of Oz, but with more screaming. The house sailed over the fence, clipped a minivan, and gently deposited the terrified passengers in a nearby field, miraculously unharmed, but forever distrustful of helium balloons. The dad tried to play it off, telling police it was an unplanned theme, airborne adventure. The bounce company's statement? "We recommend staking your house to the ground before flight." Good advice, considering the neighbors are still finding lost socks in their gutters. 3. The Piñata Massacre. A California backyard party turned into a full-scale combat simulation thanks to one very determined piñata swinger. The plan was simple: blindfold, spin, swing. The execution? Less so. The blindfolded guest misjudged her rotation, missed the piñata entirely, and delivered a full baseball-worthy swing straight into the birthday boy's uncle. Candy and chaos flew simultaneously. The uncle went down, clutching his shoulder. Someone yelled, "Call 911," and a kid yelled, "I want the blue Skittle." EMTs arrived to find the piñata still hanging, untouched, like a smug papier-mâché witness. Later, the family proudly kept it as evidence of the dumbest party ever thrown. The moral of the story? Never mix tequila with blunt objects and blindfolds, unless you're filming a Darwin Award documentary. 4. The accidental indoor slip and slide. Some genius in Florida thought it would be hilarious to turn his hallway into a slip and slide. He covered it with plastic tarps, drenched it in baby oil, and yelled, "Who needs a pool?" The problem? Baby oil doesn't dry. It spreads. Within minutes, the entire living room floor turned into a scene from a slapstick comedy. Guests tried to cross the room like baby deer on ice. One guy slipped so hard he took out the snack table, launching guacamole like shrapnel. Another guest slid directly into the TV stand, which promptly collapsed, taking the sound system with it. By the end, the party looked like a small hurricane made entirely of nacho cheese and regret. The host's defense was simple: "I didn't think it'd be that slippery." The landlord's response: "I didn't think I'd ever need to Google how to unoil laminate flooring." They say every party leaves memories. This one left a permanent oil slick that still glistens under LED lights. 5. The Champagne Cannon Catastrophe. In Los Angeles, a self-proclaimed influencer decided her 30th birthday needed Vegas energy. She rented a mansion, bought a $1,000 bottle of champagne, and borrowed what she called a confetti cannon. Except it wasn't a confetti cannon. It was a CO2 launcher used for concerts. When she pulled the trigger, instead of glitter and sparkle, the cannon unleashed a frost blast strong enough to knock over the cake, the champagne tower, and one very unlucky guest wearing a silk dress. The entire room filled with freezing mist and screams as the fire alarm blared. Sprinklers activated, soaking $10,000 worth of rented furniture and exactly one influencer's ring light setup. The video went viral, of course. The caption read, "Epic party fail," but the cleanup bill was $47,000. Moral of the story? If your party equipment requires a safety briefing, it's not decoration, it's a weapon. 6. The Basement Flood Rave. A college fraternity in Ohio decided their annual Wet n Wild Bash would be even better if they brought the beach to the basement. So they filled it with 3,000 gallons of water, courtesy of a rented fire hose and one very bad idea. Within an hour, the entire floor was underwater, and the DJ booth, or the folding table with speakers, began sparking like a fireworks show. Someone yelled, "Keep dancing," as the lights flickered like a horror movie. When the basement wall finally cracked, water burst through into the laundry room, flooding half the neighborhood. The cops arrived by boat. The local news described it as a spontaneous community pool. The frat's president said it was worth it. The university disagreed. They suspended the entire chapter for engineering negligence. To this day, the old house still smells like chlorine and regret. It's the only basement in town that legally qualifies as an indoor lagoon. 7. The Goat Guest of Honor. In rural Pennsylvania, one couple decided to make their party quirky and unforgettable. Their solution? Renting a live goat as a party mascot. For the first hour, the goat was the star of the show. Selfies, snacks, and endless petting. But goats, as it turns out, have two hobbies: eating and chaos. It started small: a tipped-over drink, a chewed-up tablecloth. Then, like a true agent of anarchy, the goat climbed onto the kitchen counter and launched himself directly into the snack table. Guacamole everywhere. Someone screamed, someone else tried to grab it. The goat panicked and headbutted a speaker clean off the shelf. The music stopped, people screamed, and the goat proudly stood in the wreckage like he'd just conquered Rome. The owner finally arrived and said, "Yeah, he does that sometimes." The couple's takeaway: never rent anything that poops when it's nervous. Guests still call it the greatest of all time, literally and ironically. 8. The Ceiling Collapse Surprise. A quiet suburban house party turned into an episode of Mythbusters, Gravity Edition. Around midnight, a group of teens decided to test how many people could dance on the second-floor landing before it broke. The answer? 9. The floor gave out mid-song, dropping half the crowd straight into the living room below. The crash was followed by stunned silence. And then applause. Miraculously, no one was seriously hurt. The one guy landed in a bowl of chili and declared himself reborn in beans. The parents, returning early from vacation, were greeted by a hole in the ceiling, 40 dazed kids, and a DJ who swore he didn't know about weight limits. Insurance refused to cover the damage, citing reckless floor behavior. The house is now famous in the neighborhood, not for its design, but for being the only two-story living room created entirely by stupidity and bass drops. 9. The Glitter Apocalypse. Someone once said, "You can never have too much glitter." They were wrong, catastrophically wrong. A house party in Portland decided on a sparkle theme, complete with glitter balloons, glitter drinks, and a rented industrial fan to spread the magic. At midnight, the host unleashed the fan while guests tossed handfuls of glitter into the air. Within seconds, the house looked like a disco ball had exploded. People were coughing, sneezing, and sparkling in places glitter should never reach. The fan didn't just blow it around, it atomized it. It stuck to the walls, the food, and even inside the fridge. Months later, guests were still finding glitter in their cars, wallets, and relationships. One couple divorced partly because of unresolved glitter trauma. The host later learned that cleaning services classify glitter contamination as hazardous material removal. The cleanup cost more than the entire party budget, and yet the house still glows faintly under moonlight. The moral? Glitter is not a decoration. It's a biological weapon disguised as arts and crafts. The party was unforgettable, yes, but so was the aftermath. NASA should honestly study it. The stuff survived 5 deep cleans, a repaint, and 2 exorcisms. 10. The Margarita Hot Tub Fiasco. In Texas, someone had the brilliant idea to fill their hot tub with margarita mix for the vibes. They poured in 30 gallons of pre-made mix, 5 bottles of tequila, and a heroic amount of salt around the rim. At first, everyone thought it was genius, a pool you could drink from. Then the problems began. The salt corroded the jets, the sugar caramelized from the heat, and the alcohol fumes turned the backyard into a flammable death trap. The party quickly became a sticky, burning nightmare. Guests emerged coated in a layer of syrup and poor decisions, smelling like citrus and failure. The next morning, the hot tub looked like it had been filled with radioactive soup. It never worked again. The host proudly said, "It was worth it for the photos." The repair company said, "This is the dumbest thing we've ever seen." Local legend says the ants in that neighborhood are still drunk to this day. It's the only time a backyard spa doubled as both a cocktail and a crime scene. 11. The Karaoke Meltdown. You'd think karaoke brings people together. In Chicago, it tore a house apart, literally. The party started simple: drinks, snacks, and a borrowed karaoke machine from a coworker. Then, two guests decided to turn Bohemian Rhapsody into a full-blown performance piece, complete with air guitar and interpretive dance. When someone tried to unplug the machine, a shouting match broke out. Voices rose, drinks spilled, and one very dramatic guest threw a mic stand like it was the WWE. The stand hit a ceiling fan, the fan hit the floor, and the crowd hit panic mode. Within minutes, the cops showed up responding to possible domestic violence. They found 14 adults covered in confetti, one crying over a broken mic, and a drunk man still passionately singing "Nothing Really Matters." The officer's report read simply, "Noise complaint escalated to light destruction." The karaoke machine didn't survive, but the legend did. To this day, whenever someone in that friend group mentions Queen, everyone quietly leaves the room, just in case. 12. The Punch Bowl of Doom. At a New Year's Eve party in Denver, someone decided to make the strongest punch ever. They mixed vodka, rum, gin, champagne, Red Bull, and, for color, fruit punch concentrate. The result looks like liquid courage and smelled like regret. Guests were told, just 1 cup. But of course no one listened. Within an hour, people were dancing on furniture, confessing secrets to strangers, and challenging lamps to rap battles. Then came the twist. The punch bowl was sitting directly over a heating vent. Warm alcohol fumes filled the house like invisible anesthesia. One by one, guests started dropping onto couches like tranquilized zoo animals. The host's dog barked in alarm while someone tried to toast to the floor's birthday. When firefighters arrived, they opened every window and declared the house chemically festive. The punch bowl was confiscated as evidence of chemical irresponsibility. Years later, friends still whisper about the night of the red mist. No one remembers how it ended, which, ironically, makes it their most memorable party ever. 13. The Drone Delivery Disaster. A Silicon Valley tech bro decided to make his party cutting edge. His idea? Use drones to deliver drinks to guests in the backyard. Sounds futuristic, until gravity got involved. The first drone successfully delivered a beer. The second one dropped a White Claw onto someone's head. By the third, guests were ducking for cover as cans rained from the sky like hail. Someone screamed, "It's attacking," as one rogue drone clipped a string of fairy lights, sending sparks everywhere. In true tech fashion, the host yelled, "It's just a beta test!" Moments later, one drone hit a tree, exploded, and set a decorative umbrella on fire. Guests fled while the host tried to control the chaos with his phone. Right before another drone kamikazed into the punch bowl. Firefighters showed up, baffled but unsurprised. The headline the next morning read, "Man invents alcoholic airstrike." To this day, the guy insists it mostly worked. The FAA disagrees. 14. The Great Backyard Wrestling Debacle. Every friend group has that one guy who watches too much WWE and decides physics doesn't apply to him. In Ohio, that guy built a professional wrestling ring using garden hoses, lawn chairs, and blind confidence. The main event? 2 shirtless contestants fighting for a golden plunger trophy. It started off fine until someone decided to climb the fence and do a backflip. He missed by a heroic margin, landing squarely on a picnic table. The crowd cheered like it was scripted, but the sound of cracking wood was 100% real. Another guy tried to save the show by jumping on the trampoline and launching himself into the chaos. That's when the sprinkler system kicked on, turning the yard into a muddy demolition derby. Neighbors called 911 thinking it was a brawl. When police arrived, they found 10 muddy adults chanting, "No regrets," and one man asking if he still got his championship belt. The only real winner was gravity. 15. The Firework and Fondue. Tragedy. A Colorado couple decided to host a classy outdoor dinner party for the 4th of July, and nothing says class like combining fondue with fireworks. As the cheese bubbled in a pot on a patio table, the host decided to set the mood by lighting a small fountain firework nearby. What he didn't realize was that his fuse pack was facing the wrong direction, straight at the fondue. The firework launched a flaming comet into the pot, splattering molten cheese across guests like delicious napalm. People screamed, slipped, and fell while patriotic music blasted in the background. Someone yelled, "Save the brie!" as if that would help. The night ended with mild burns, melted decorations, and one woman claiming she'd been baptized by cheddar. The hosts learned a valuable lesson. If you're mixing dairy and explosives, make sure one of them stays cold. The only thing more burnt than the guests was the potato salad. 16. The haunted house party. That wasn't a group of college students in Massachusetts rented an old Victorian mansion for Halloween, advertising it as a legit haunted house. They spent weeks decorating. Fog machines, creepy dolls, motion sensors, the works. The only problem? The motion sensors were wired to the house's ancient electrical panel. When the party started, the overload shorted out half the system, leaving the house flickering like a horror movie set. Guests thought it was part of the show, until the fog machine overheated and set off the fire alarm. Panic ensued. People fled screaming about ghosts as firefighters arrived to find a dozen costumed zombies vomiting in the front yard from fake smoke inhalation. The house was fine, but the reputation stuck. Locals now call it the real haunted house, mostly because no one's brave enough to rent it again. The landlord just shrugs. It's good marketing. 17. The cake explosion. At a surprise birthday party in Seattle, the host wanted to make the cake reveal epic. She hid a small confetti cannon inside the cake, planning to trigger it when the candles were blown out. Unfortunately, she didn't test the blast radius. When the birthday boy leaned in to make a wish, she hit the button, and the cannon fired at point-blank range. Frosting and confetti coated everyone within 10 feet. The top tier of the cake launched into the ceiling fan, splattering vanilla like a sugary crime scene. The guest of honor spent the rest of the night blinking rainbow sprinkles out of his eyes. The host tried to laugh it off, saying, "At least it wasn't a gender reveal." True, but it was close. The bakery now advertises explosion-free cakes, and somewhere in that ceiling fan, a piece of buttercream still spins in memory of the dumbest dessert detonation in history. 18. The slip and sip disaster. In Miami, a beach house party introduced a new concept, slip and sip. The idea? A massive slip and slide that ended at a kiddie pool full of rum punch. What could go wrong? Everything. The first few runs were a hit, until someone spilled sunscreen all over the slide, turning it into an Olympic-speed death chute. One guest launched through the punch bowl, taking out the inflatable flamingo and 3 cups of dignity. Another tried to stop his fall mid-slide and dislocated his shoulder. Soon, the pool was 90% rum, 10% blood, and 100% regret. EMTs showed up shaking their heads. The host's defense, "We were hydrating." The punch bowl, now shattered, was dubbed the world's saddest cocktail. To this day, locals swear they can still smell rum when it rains near that beach. 19. The jacuzzi Jell-O incident. Only in Vegas would someone think, you know, what this hot tub needs? Jell-O. A group of partygoers decided to create the world's largest gelatin shot by dumping hundreds of packets of strawberry Jell-O mix into a bubbling jacuzzi. For about 10 glorious minutes, it was hilarious, until the mixture began to solidify. The jets clogged, the water turned thick and red, and suddenly people were stuck waist-deep in something that looked like a horror movie prop. Guests screamed, laughed, and slowly realized they were literally congealing in place. When they tried to get out, the sticky gelatin suctioned to their legs like glue. The hot tub motor burned out, releasing smoke, and the cleanup crew later described it as a war crime committed by dessert enthusiasts. The house had to replace the entire spa system. One guy joked, "At least it smelled delicious." His girlfriend dumped him a week later, probably still scraping Jell-O out of her hair. 20. The ice sculpture meltdown. A fancy corporate party in New York featured a 10-foot ice sculpture shaped like a company logo. The problem? The event planner forgot to account for indoor heating. As guests arrived, the ice began to sweat, drip, and slowly collapse like a dying snowman. By the second hour, it was a slippery waterfall of doom. Champagne glasses slid off the display table like suicidal lemmings. The CEO gave a speech mid-meltdown, only to be hit by a chunk of falling ice. Poetic justice, considering he'd approved the idea. The melted water flooded the stage and short-circuited the DJ's equipment, replacing music with a high-pitched scream of feedback. One guest slipped and took the entire dessert table down with them. The night's highlight? A soaked janitor muttering, "That's one way to liquidate assets." The next morning, HR sent out a memo banning decor that can melt, explode, or insult the laws of physics. 21. The Flaming Punch Experiment. At a frat reunion in Atlanta, someone remembered an old trick from college, lighting punch on fire for dramatic effect. The host poured grain alcohol into a bowl, flicked a lighter, and basked in the blue flame's glow. For 30 seconds, it looked awesome. Then someone decided to ladle more punch mid-flame. The alcohol ignited the ladle, the tablecloth, and soon the entire buffet. In seconds, it was like watching a chemistry lesson on why you don't set drinks ablaze indoors. Guests scrambled for the exits, while one guy tried to smother the flames with a pizza box, yelling, "I got this!" Spoiler, he did not. Firefighters arrived to find a melted table, and a host insisting it looked way cooler in movies. The charred remains of the punch bowl were later framed as a trophy of stupidity. 22. The DIY foam party fiasco. In Arizona, a bachelor party decided to skip renting a foam machine and build their own. Using dish soap, garden hoses, and an old leaf blower, they created what they called Bubble Fest 3000. It worked. A little too well. Within minutes, the backyard was buried under 6 feet of suds. The foam spread into the street, swallowing cars like a cheerful apocalypse. Neighbors thought it was a chemical leak and called emergency services. Firefighters arrived to find drunk men wading through foam shouting, "We live here now!" The city issued a fine for public nuisance by soap-based disaster. The kicker? The bride-to-be saw the news coverage and called off the wedding. The groom later said, "At least it was memorable." The neighbors still call that night the White Tide. 23. The Ceiling Fan Confetti Tornado. In a cramped New Orleans apartment, a birthday host decided to DIY confetti by tossing shredded paper onto a spinning ceiling fan. It worked beautifully. For 10 seconds. Then the fan motor overheated, the blades broke, and the entire unit launched into the wall like a helicopter from Final Destination. Confetti burst everywhere, the lights flickered, and a cake went airborne. Guests ducked, screaming while the host yelled, "It's festive!" as sparks rained down. By the time the fire department arrived, the room looked like a paper factory explosion. One firefighter reportedly said, "Next time just buy balloons." The landlord's reaction was less festive. "You're banned from electricity." The photos, though? Absolutely magical. Some parties blow your mind. Others just blow up your ceiling fan.